I think a lot of people are vying for attention. And because of that, think about podcasters. I'm sure there are genuine reasons for doing that. But then, how many followers and who's following you and all that. And the pressure to keep that up. Can you imagine? And I know for a fact that for many people, many of those things don't fit their character. Many of those things are not who they are.
It's having those role models that I can watch and see in their daily life, not on a screen, not in a book.
This is like my rule for myself. Like if I have things about me that I think that could use some growth, to say nicely, like I'm not gonna surround myself with people that are like okay with being in the place that I struggle being in and I don't want to be in.
Growing up, I always thought I'd be a lot like my dad and my mom. They were really great examples for me on how I should live my life and place my values. I feel like I've just been giving while not expecting anything in return. I've had to consciously think about how I can help other people. So I guess it's just been a conscious effort to try and grow into that type of person, because I don't think that's something that just comes along naturally.
I'll usually try to connect with God. That's one thing I do to give me perspective in the morning. But I think before that is recognizing that I need perspective. I would really like to be someone who can have faith. I can lean on God. I can be present, like do things that make others laugh. Like I love making people laugh, being someone that someone can talk to.
Something that my dad would always say is, it takes years for you to build up a reputation and seconds to tear it down. And so really being sure that you surround yourself with people that are going to be a positive influence, and that in matters of seconds, it's not going to completely destroy who you are and who you've built your life to be.
But also people that do have a good connection with God. I think people that believe in praying for each other, and being able to hold each other accountable.
I think it's my job, and who I want to be is someone who gives someone a little joy in their life. I guess the question that I always ask is, how am I making this world a better place for the people around me? That is what I want to be.
We have all these cultural standards that say, if you are a person who's doing well in life, you ought to be here and here and here and here and be able to do all those kinds of things. And if we're not on the timetable, it's kind of like, oh, what's wrong with us? That ends up taking up so much of our time. Becoming more like Jesus takes the intentionality of having a vision for what that looks like, and then being honest enough with ourselves to recognize how we're not doing that. We are being made in the image of Jesus through the power of the Holy Spirit, but it isn't as if we can just expect that that's going to happen without actually knowing the character of Jesus.
I think I'm still trying to find that voice. I've found who I am more than obviously when I was a kid, but I think not tuning out those voices, but listening and making it my own is something I'm working on.
I can't begin without saying thank you to the team, which I'm honored to be a part of, for all of the work this camp meeting series. I love every single one of them, and I'm profoundly grateful to each of them. It's been a wonderful month because of their hard work, and I'm grateful. You are changing every day. You're changing even when you don't realize it. You're changing, but it's just the fact that it happens in such subtle ways, that it happens so slowly, that you don't notice it. You don't notice it, at least, until you go to an alumni weekend, or you sit down with a wedding album, or you go to the home of some friends and you look at the pictures on their hallway wall and you say, whoa, you're changing. So I want to give you some visual evidence of that today. I reached out and asked for volunteers on the team that would be willing to share some pictures, and so some of them did. So I want to show you what I mean when I say we're all changing. So a picture we'll start with is this one. This is a very dashing young couple who works here at our church. You know who they are, don't you? That's Adriana Pereira and Francisco, her husband, director of music and worship. Then we go to this one. Now, I recognized Ashley immediately. I wanted to go ask Ashley, who's this young guy behind you? Almost didn't recognize him. But there they are, the family, all four of them now. And we just keep changing. Now, honestly, this one really upsets me. I mean, this is years apart. Are you kidding me? Seriously? It's like the picture on the left was taken on Friday and the one on the right was taken on Sabbath. That is not fair. So most of us are changing. I'll change it to that. Now there you see some change. Not in the beautiful woman on the right. The kiddos have changed just a little bit, and that guy on the left, well, you judge. We just keep changing. Keeps happening. And then look at this. Elena looks the same. Look at Phil. He's like 12 years old. He just looks like a kid. And yet the same here. Still looks the same. There they are, the whole clan. And we just keep changing. Now this one, this is another Joey and Sarah. We could have taken this 10 years ago or 10 years from now, and they just look the same. This is Tim Oliver, our pastor for modern worship. And look at that couple. Wow. Kim, there you are on the left, haven't changed a bit. But this guy on the right, wow. There they are now today. You recognize who they are now. Or what about this one? Being a flower girl at a wedding. I looked at that one for a bit, looked at the eyes, trying to figure out who is that? And then realized, oh, that's Jamie. That's our director of care and counseling. So she's changed over the years. This is another one. There are about three of them that you know, the picture may be years ago or may be recent, but they look exactly the same. So it kind of damages my theory. Now this one is amazing. So I looked at this picture thinking, now I don't think I recognize anyone in that picture. Until I finally realized the one I should be recognizing is the young boy on the left who would grow up to become the youth pastor at Loma University Church and become the young boy on the right. Now, I'll tell you, Jody here is proving my theory that at least the women on the pastoral staff and the pastor's wives at LLUC don't ever change. They just kind of stay the same. It's the rest of us who are showing the marks of some wear and tear. And then this one. What a great shot. Bow tie, ready to hit the prime time. In fact, he was my suite mate at Andrews University just a few years ago. And there he is. Who would have, they look just alike, those two pictures, Adrian. Who would have dreamed that that young boy would have that voice that comes out here and sings those bass numbers? Ernie, where are you? Have mercy. Sporting that mustache, you and Sarah haven't changed much over the years. This one took me a little while too. I was looking thinking, who is that? Now you probably know, but it took me this picture to fully realize. Oh, that's Shauna, our children's pastor. Okay, I don't even know what to say here. I'll just say Linda looks exactly the same. Pero Miguel, ay mi madre. Look at that. And here they are now with their family in tow. I don't know if you're ready for this next one. Oh no, this is one more before the one I thought it was. So this is a brother and a sister. You may have figured out who the sister is on the right. If you haven't, it's Joel Royer, who's changed a bit over the years. And then the one I was talking about. That's Linda Hardy on the left, and that's Stu Hardy on the right. Isn't it amazing? Sometimes we think we know exactly who people are. We know them over all the years, and then we get a little surprised. I had to include one last one. This is Greg Batla, who has led our worship music for our services today from the piano. This was just after he moved to Loma Linda, straight here from Texas, and he said, we got to get a Texas picture. So about 15, 16 years ago, there we were taking a picture at camp meeting, no less. As I look at these pictures, it is underlined again for me that we are changing every day. We continue to change. It's usually so subtle that we don't notice it until you come to church and there's your picture and you say, ay, mi madre, ¿qué pasó conmigo? And you think, what in the world happened? I have gotten old. It reminds me of the person that says that life actually unfolds in 4 seasons. First one, you believe in Santa. Second one, you don't believe in Santa. Third one, you become Santa. And fourth one, you look like Santa. So there's the 4 seasons of life that underline the reality that we just keep changing. Now, we didn't come here today to take a maybe fun but nostalgic trip down memory lane. We did come to talk about changing, but not in that sense. Came to talk about changing as people, the core persons that we are. Here's what I want to tell you today. Simply this. Every day, every single day, you are becoming a little bit more like the culture around you or a little bit more like the God above you. You're becoming a little bit more like the culture around you or a little bit more like the God above you. So pay attention to who you are becoming. We want to look at Paul's words in Romans, the 12th chapter, because Paul is focused in on this reality. Now, you have to understand the context. For 11 chapters, Paul has been building up to this moment in the letter. These 11 chapters have been theologically rich, profound, and at times dense. Scholars 2,000 years later still struggle to understand all that Paul is saying about the faithfulness of God. That's 11 chapters. And then for 4 chapters over here, he will go into praxis, how we are to live our lives, what it looks like when theology puts on jeans and tennis shoes and goes out to live in the world. He's going to talk about that. But right here in the middle, right at the crease point, right at the transition point, right at the hinge, are 2 verses. 2 verses in which he makes that transition. And it's not just those 2 verses, it's really verse 2 that we're most interested in today, but we're going to read them both. So let's start with the first one, Romans 12, verse 1. Therefore I urge you, brothers and sisters. Now remember, I've said it before, may say it again. When you see therefore, you got to ask what it's there for. The reason this therefore is there is he's saying, based on all of this that has gone before for 11 chapters, which he will shortly refer to as God's mercy. Based on all of that, then this, therefore, I urge you, brothers and sisters, in view of God's mercy, to offer your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and pleasing to God. This is your true and proper worship. I urge you. One commentary says that Greek word urge, that gets translated urge here, is between ask and command. It's much stronger than ask. It's not as strong as command. So somewhere in between those two, Paul is passionately, from the heart, saying, I urge you to do this. And what is it that he's urging them to do? In view of God's mercy, these first 11 chapters, he now wants the next 4 chapters, the praxis, the way we live our lives. He says, I want your life to be one that is fully committed to God, as though you're laying it on the altar, a living sacrifice. Just give it over to him completely, so that you may live your life in correspondence with the mercy that he has poured out upon you. That, in fact, he says, that will be your spiritual act of worship. That's your service to God. Like one church that over the back door, after the service was over, when people left, they saw the sign up above that says, the service begins now. They had it in many ways right, and that's what Paul is saying. We've enjoyed the doxological realities of God's love. Now, it's time to go live a life of service. Now that will involve change. It will change us day in and day out. And that's what he comes to next in verse 2, our main interest. Verse 2, do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Then you will be able to test and approve what God's will is, his good, pleasing, and perfect will. We're changing every single day. We have a choice to be conformed to the culture around us, or to be transformed by the mercy and the grace of God. But one way or the other, we will change. It was based on that knowledge that Richard Halverson, at that time chaplain of the U.S. Senate, wrote a piece. I apologize, it's in male language. That was the way it was done at the time, decades ago when he wrote this piece. But listen and hear the message that he's communicating. He says, you're going to meet an old man someday down the road, 10, 30, 50 years from now, waiting there for you. You'll be catching up with him. What kind of old man are you going to meet? He may be a seasoned, soft, gracious fellow. A gentleman who has grown old gracefully, surrounded by hosts of friends who call him blessed because of what his life has meant to them. Or he may be a bitter, disillusioned, dried up old buzzard without a good word for anyone, soured, friendless, and alone. That old man, says Halverson, will be you. He'll be a composite of everything you do, say, and think today and tomorrow. His mind will be set in a mold you have made by your beliefs. His heart will be turning out what you've been putting into it. Every little thought, every deed goes into this old man. Every day in every way, you're becoming more and more like yourself. Amazing, but true. You're beginning to look more like yourself, think more like yourself, talk more like yourself. You're becoming like yourself more and more. Live only in terms of what you're getting out of life, and the old man gets smaller, drier, harder, crabbier, more self-centered. Open your life to others. Think in terms of what you can give, your contribution to life. And the old man grows larger, softer, gentler, kinder. Halverson is right. We are changing every day, and all the millions of decisions and actions we engage throughout our lives finally become that elderly woman, that elderly man, that each of us, by the grace of God, will become if we live that long. Who will that be? Paul says, well, you're either being conformed largely by the culture, or you're being transformed by the grace of God. So to get a glimpse of how this works, how this change happens, I want to read verse 2 again, only this time from the paraphrase, The Message. Listen to how it is rendered in this paraphrase. Don't become so well adjusted to your culture that you fit into it without even thinking. Instead, fix your attention on God. You'll be changed from the inside out. Readily recognize what He wants from you and quickly respond to it. Unlike the culture around you, always dragging you down to its level of immaturity, God brings the best out of you, develops well-formed maturity in you. I love the way Peterson rendered that line, trying to capture the essence of what Paul is saying. Don't become so well adjusted to the culture that you fit into it without even thinking. In many regards, that's what culture is. It's being able to live without doing a lot of thinking and a lot of second thinking. If you wonder about the accuracy of that, just think back to a time when maybe you visited another country and sat down with a family in their home for a meal in a culture that was totally foreign to you. When I've had the privilege of being in those situations, I'm always kind of on edge thinking, okay, what do I do next and what do I say? I don't want to offend anybody, especially not without realizing it. And so I'm constantly thinking about it. In a sense, that's what Paul is saying to the believers. You live in a culture. It's not all bad. But don't adjust to it so cleanly and easily that you live in it thoughtlessly, without even thinking. And just follow its mores, its dictates, its customs, its patterns. Just go along to get along. Just fit into the peer pressure. He says, don't do that because it will conform you to itself. I think about the fact with great gratitude of the gift I have had over my life to speak a second language. It's a great gift. But for me, there's no merit in it. I say that because when I was about time to start school and start learning, my mom was just starting to teach me a bit about reading and writing, and my younger sister was born. She appeared on the scene, and Mom said, okay, off to school with you. So off to school I went in a Spanish-speaking country to a Spanish-speaking school and learned really to read and write Spanish before English. So there was no merit in that. I just fit into the culture. This is what we did. We learned this, we played and talked this language. It became a part of my cultural milieu. There's no virtue in that. You just fit in and do what is expected. I'll tell you the ones who have merit. Mom and Dad, who went to Colombia in their 20s, not knowing any Spanish, studied it intensively for 6 months, and Dad began preaching in Spanish and never looked back, preached it with no accent. That has merit in it for both of them. My wife, who came to this country in her 20s to learn English, didn't speak English. She tells me, I went to the dean, Mrs. Diltz at Southwestern Adventist University, went to the dean and said, do not give me a Spanish-speaking roommate. I don't want a Spanish-speaking roommate. The reason she said that was very simple. She said, I came here to learn English. If I have a Spanish-speaking roommate, this isn't the way she would have probably put it then, but I'm going to put it this way for here. If I have a Spanish-speaking roommate, I will naturally gravitate back to that culture and do what the easiest thing is. And I won't accomplish what I came here to do. That has merit. So many of you who speak a second language, who maybe came to this country and didn't speak English or have learned another language in another country, that's going against the grain. It's having to thoughtfully pursue something. And that's what Paul is talking about here. If you just thoughtlessly live in your culture, you'll be conformed to it. That's who you'll be changed into. But if you thoughtfully, prayerfully, well, notice how he says it next. Because when he comes to the end of that sentence, don't just thoughtlessly fit into your culture, he then says, instead, fix your attention on God. Fix your attention on God. Because that will now become your standard, your call, your rubric. Fix your attention on God. Because conformed, that's outside in. Transformed, that's inside out. Conformed, that's thoughtless. Transformed, that's thoughtful. Conformed, that's go with the flow. Give in to peer pressure. Transformed, that's against the grain. Conformed, probably the easiest thing you'll ever do. Transformed, probably the hardest thing you'll ever do. And maybe you ask, what do you mean the hardest thing? I thought a relationship with God and salvation was easy. It's a gift. Well, notice again what Paul says here when he talks about this. Again in verse 2, he has just said, don't be conformed to the pattern of this world. And then he says this, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Renewing of your mind. How does that happen? Again, out of verse 2, this from the Message. Readily recognize what he wants from you and quickly respond to it. Friends, that's hard. To readily recognize what God wants from me means I know something about this book. To readily recognize means I've learned something about how to apply it to life. To readily recognize it means I've been continually and on an ongoing basis opening myself to the Spirit of God, asking, please come into my life. Form me in your image. To readily recognize. And then to readily act on it. To do something about it. So what might that look like in the renewing of our minds? I want to suggest that here in Romans, we have this kind of at the heart. It's not the middle, but at the heart of Romans, you have the theology before you have the praxis to follow. What does renewing our minds look like in those two cases? Well, on this side, think about what the culture tells us. The culture tells us, you want to get into professional school, law, dental, medicine, whatever it is, be at the top of the heap. You've got to perform, you've got to be the best, the top scorers. You want to get a great residency, you know what the culture tells us? Culture tells us you want to be on the varsity team, basketball team, then you better be at the top level. You better be the cream of the crop. You have to perform in order to deserve that. Culture says you want to feel like you're worth something? Then pay attention to your zip code. Pay attention to your car. Pay attention to your house and its size. That's the way you feel like you're worth something. The culture tells you all of those messages. And it's so easy to just slip into that mode. To fight to get to the top, to get the corner C-suite, to have the right letters after my name, so that I can have a comfortable life. That's the culture says, you want it, deserve it, earn it. So what do these 11 chapters tell us it's like in the fellowship of Jesus? You know what it says? It says we're all in bad shape. Every last one of us. All have sinned, fall short of the glory of God. All of us. Jew, Gentile, anyone in between. It tells us if you wait to clean yourself up before you come to join this fellowship, you'll never join this fellowship. Because you'll never be clean enough to belong in the way the culture tells you you need to be to belong at the top. So the fellowship of Jesus says, come as you are, come today. I was talking to someone a little while ago, they were talking about the hospital and not going. Why? Because there were sick people there. Seriously. All right? I thought that's what hospitals are for sick people. It's the same with church. I'm not going there, a bunch of sinners there. Really? Okay, well, if that's not who belongs, I better march out, and there are a couple of you ought to go with me. Seriously? The gospel of Jesus says you belong, you are welcomed, you are taken in as you are. It says that the gift of God's grace is exactly that. It's a gift. Because even though all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God, He has given us the gift of eternal life through Jesus Christ our Lord. Over and again, our cultural messages are directly challenged by the gospel and the community of Jesus, which means in order for us to understand this, we have to have a renewed mind, an understanding that is different from what we naturally get. And then on the other side of this, the chapters after this transition. The praxis. This is when theology puts on its jeans and burlap shirt and boots and goes out and lives in the marketplace. This is what theology looks like out there. I would argue that there may be no verse that better captures how we are to live that than one just a few verses later from the ones we've been reading, when Paul says, let love be sincere. Let your love for others, for each other, be sincere. Now, I've shared this with some of you before. I was thinking about it again because of a devotional I did the other day for something at LLUC. And I got to looking at this again and trying to remember. So that word sincere, some of you will remember where it comes from. I went on my AI app, Perplexity, it's always right, and said, okay, where does the word sincere come from? And it said it comes from the Latin sincerus. I thought it's right. What I'd heard is right then. Now, anyone who knows Spanish recognizes that, because in Spanish you say, ella es una persona sincera. And what does sincera mean? Without wax. Sincere person is a person without wax. Drawing on the image from the ancient world of the artist who's making the sculpture to sell in the marketplace. It's looking so good until he gouges it in a couple of places and it's cracked down here. So before he takes it to the marketplace, he gets some wax and carefully works it in to the sculpture until it's perfect. Ah, this will sell now. And he sells it to you. You go home clutching your prize, set it on the mantle of the fireplace, light the fire, to sit down to look at your work of art. Only to discover as it gets hotter, the wax melts, and this was not what you thought it was. Paul is talking about that in this last section. Let your love be sincere so that even when the heat is on, it will be genuine, it will be authentic. How is that shown? In a number of different ways in those chapters. It is shown by humbly serving, using your gift in the body of Christ. It is shown by being gracious to those with whom you differ. It's shown by tolerating those whose opinions are different than your own. It is shown by being hospitable to others who may not deserve it. That's how it's shown. So when he says your mind needs to be renewed by perceiving the will of God and acting on the will of God, he's talking first of all, about what it means to be saved by Jesus, but secondly, what it means to live for Jesus. This is challenging, but the result is amazing. Last part of verse 2 again. Listen to where this leads. Unlike the culture around you, always dragging you down to its level of immaturity, God brings the best out of you, develops well-formed maturity in you. He transforms you into a mature person. That's his plan for you. You're changing every day. Subtle ways. You're either largely being conformed to the culture around you or consistently being transformed into the God above you. Now, God has great plans for you. He has great plans for me. What do I mean? I mean simply this. The word transformed in this passage only appears 4 times in the New Testament. 2 of those are in the writings of Paul. One right here in Romans 12:2, the other one in 2 Corinthians. 2 times in Paul, and 2 times in the Gospels. Mark and Matthew, 2 times. The place it appears in the Gospels is toward the latter part of Jesus' ministry. Now, I'll tell you what I think God is saying at this point in Jesus' ministry. This is my take on it. Jesus is coming to the end of his ministry, and it is as though God is saying, looking at this ragtag band of disciples, he's saying about them, you're going into something that's going to be the most devastating thing you will ever face, because this Nazarene son of mine is on his way to a confrontation at Calvary. And when that happens, you are going to be devastated. Did we believe fables? Was he who he claimed to be? So it seems to me. God says, I'm going to give you a glimpse. I'm just going to give you a glimpse of who he actually is. I'm going to encourage him on the way, but I'm going to give you a glimpse of who he is. And so they climb a mountain that becomes known as the Mount of Transfiguration. And while on the mountain, the brightness of God envelops Jesus, he shines with a splendor that stuns, that stupefies, that leaves speechless his disciples, collapsed on the ground, covering their faces. And it's as though God is saying, this is who he really is. So when you get there, don't forget this. This is who he will ultimately be. And here's the word used to describe that. Transformation. Same word. And you hear that, maybe like when I thought of it, and you think, that's amazing, but that is so not me. I don't stupefy anyone. I don't stun anyone. I don't excite anyone. I'm just an ordinary, simple human being. Well, maybe that's the point. Maybe Paul is reminding us that it's in the ordinary circumstances of life that God transforms us before one day he will truly transform us. So from a blog by John Kessler, A Stranger in His House, I read you Kessler's word, who starts out by quoting from the movie It's a Wonderful Life, quoting George Bailey, and then commenting on it. Mary, I know what I'm going to do tomorrow and the next day and the next year and the year after that. I'm going to leave this little town far behind and I'm going to see the world. Italy, Greece, the Parthenon, the Colosseum. Then I'm coming back here and I'll go to college and see what they know. And then I'm going to build things. I'm going to build airfields. I'm going to build skyscrapers 100 stories high. I'm going to build bridges a mile long. So says George Bailey in the Frank Capra classic, It's a Wonderful Life. As it turns out, George is wrong. He doesn't know what he's going to do tomorrow and the next day and the next year and the year after that. As it turns out, what he's supposed to do tomorrow is pretty much what he did today. God's plan is for him to do the ordinary thing, which is, of course, the last thing George wants to do. If you remember another famous scene from the film, you know that George Bailey wants to lasso the moon. I thought about Kessler's rights. I thought about George Bailey last night when I couldn't sleep. I was thinking about God's will, something I haven't thought about for some time, not seriously, not in the obsessive way I used to when I was back in college, wondering about God's plan for my future. I don't think much about God's will because, like George Bailey, I know what I'm going to do tomorrow and the next day and the next year. At least I think I do. Get up and go to work. Come home and have dinner with my wife, take a walk, try to think of something to write about for my blog, goals that are for the most part pretty low on the horizon. But here's the irony. I'm doing everything I dreamed of doing when I was back in college. I'm married to someone I love. I'm teaching, writing, and preaching. But it's not in the way, and frankly, not to the extent that I imagined when I wondered what God's plan for my life would look like. In those days, I was aiming for the moon. God's will, revealed through the constraints and necessities of ordinary life, have compelled me to lower my expectations. I wanted to expect great things from God and attempt great things for God. His agenda for me seems far more commonplace. This has not always been easy to accept. In his book, Christ Plays in 10,000 Places, Eugene Peterson recounts the story of the 4th century church father Gregory of Nyssa, whose brother Basil had arranged for him to be made bishop of Cappadocia. Gregory objected, Peterson writes. He didn't want to be stuck in such an out-of-the-way place. His brother told him he didn't want Gregory to obtain distinction from his church, but to confer distinction on it. Is this not what Christ wants for us as well? to seek the good of the small places in which He has placed us, and to confer distinction upon them by serving Him with humility there. The path of glory is often an obscure one. It's the way of the cross. God wants to transform you. He wants to transform me. We'd like to think of those great, grand things, the Mount of Transfiguration. That's what I'm going to do. And God says, no, serve me where you are. Make choices where you are. Live in the ordinary circumstances of your life, and while you're there, recognize that you're either being largely conformed by the culture around you or transformed by the God above you. And just keep allowing Him to renew your mind. You know, sometimes, it's what we've kind of tried to talk about this camp meeting series. Sometimes it's not a bad idea to do an inventory. Sit down in front of your computer, 8.5 by 11 legal pad, and just do an inventory. Do the people I know and love tell me that I'm becoming more loving or more angry? Do the people that I know and love tell me that they feel more honored and included in my life, or more excluded and that I'm more distant? Do the people that I know and love tell me, stop talking about politics and get off your phone? You've become a source of real irritation. Or do they tell me, thank you for being attentive to your family and to me? It's not a bad idea to occasionally do an inventory. Why? Because every single day you are changing. So, pay attention to who you are becoming. And that's really it. That's the message. Because of that, maybe the best thing you can do is to turn your eyes upon Jesus and look full in His wonderful face. Because more than any other way, that will renew your mind. And God bless you in the process.